typically, as you faithful listeners and viewers know, we enjoy doing a JP and the Beans top five. We're going to fudge the rules a little bit for this round, and we're going to stretch it to a six rather than a five slot. Because with Volume 3 being released, we now have a total of six either individual characters or, in the case of the Guardians, group that have had trilogies, at least. Some have had a fourth. Looking at you, Thor. But it's a great opportunity to pull back and look at that. Now, we're not going to include the Avengers movies because that's such a broad, big, that's almost includes everybody, right? So we're going to scale it back just a little bit. But it's now an appropriate time to ask ourselves the question of, all right, which characters' movies have you enjoyed the most? So, per usual, these are our personal preferences, right? This is not what we're saying that you or anyone else should have as an opinion or preference. It's just what we have enjoyed the most, right? So, here are your candidates, right? You've got Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Ant-Man, Spider-Man, and the Guardians of the Galaxy have all had at least three movies. Thor is the lone wolf with the
This is so
out there.
Isn't that fascinating?
It is.
He's the one who gets 4 movies.
It is.
And then Ant-Man is in
I
there.
can't believe Ant-Man has one movie, much less three.
I know, right?
Continues to perplex and astound me.
Like, 3 of these make sense. Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man. All make sense.
Yeah.
Other 3?
No.
What?
No. No, it absolutely does not. Guardians, Ant-Man, Thor.
Daredevil doesn't have a trilogy?
Correct. No. Just
Crazy.
truly, when you sit back and ponder that, out of all of the Marvel characters that are available, it is actually wild to think of that in that context. So we're gonna take a little more time here, go in a little bit of a deeper dive in. Not true to form, I want us to reveal, hey, here's our tops, our top 6 or the rankings that we provided for them, and then kind of go through them piece by piece. So a little less of a surprise here, but I think a fun opportunity to dialogue on why we have these folks arranged the way that we do. All right, so I'll go first. I'll go through my whole list and I'll have you go. I'm going to start from bottom to top. All right, for me, Thor is safely at number 6. So bringing up the basement. Thank you, Thor.
The only one with 4 movies.
Yep, quantity did not do him favors in this regard. The 5th spot, Iron Man. All right, with Iron Man 1, Iron Man 2, Iron Man 3. The 4th spot, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. The titles get longer, as it turns out. Spider-Man. Number 3, with Homecoming, Far From Home, and No Way Home. Guardians in the 2nd slot with volumes 1, 2, and 3. And then for me, Captain America is my number 1 with First Avenger, Winter Soldier, and Civil War. So there you go. Riles, let's hear yours.
At number 6, I too have Thor.
Great choice.
Number 5, I have Ant-Man. Number 4, I have Iron Man.
Yep.
Number 3, I have Cap. Number 2, I have Spidey. And at number 1, I got Guardians of the Galaxy.
Love it. Okay, so let's take it from our guy Thor, since we have some common ground there. He's firmly at the bottom. And that's not to say that all of his movies are bad. This is just personal preference. What have I enjoyed the most? I really enjoyed Ragnarok. It wasn't, I don't hold it in as high regard as others, not because I hate on it. It's just not my personal, oh, I really love that movie. It's really good. It's entertaining. I thought it got too goofy, but it didn't overcorrect or overbalance like Thor Love and Thunder really did. So I thought it probably found as good and as enjoyable a tone as it could. But holistically, like the first Thor movie, just okay. Thor the Dark World, also just okay. But neither of those am I ever eager to like go back and rewatch.
They, for some reason, they never found their footing with Thor. And I've said this over and over again, and I will continue to do this.
Yep.
It should have been their Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Thor should have been their Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
There is so much lore
So
and
much
mythology
Yes.
to Thor,
Yes.
where the main villain in the first one was Loki and his dad.
Right.
Loki's
Loki and Laufey.
Loki
Right.
and Laufey,
Yep.
technically,
Right.
but Loki better.
Yep. Yep.
Which Loki's great
Yep.
as a villain. Number 2, Malekith, who
Mhm.
no one cares to remember, who's supposed to be kind of
Just a
more of a threat.
disservice to the character.
Right.
Yes.
Hela, they landed.
Yep.
Hela was the only one they landed.
Yep.
She came in, established dominance, and then they butchered the butcher.
Oh.
So I just don't understand it from that standpoint. I don't know how you miss that many times.
You know what they were never able to do is, to your point, and it's a good one. There is a lot of mythology there that they could have gained just so much traction from, and so much storytelling opportunities from, but they never found a foil consistently for Thor outside of Loki. Like, whenever Loki and Thor weren't together, or weren't at least on parallel planes, it just didn't. It lost a lot of its luster, right? Yes, Malekith is the main villain in Thor: The Dark World, but Loki has a huge part to play. Same in Ragnarok. Loki is a significant character in that movie. And then Thor: Love and Thunder, Loki's not a part of it at all. And you feel it in his absence, right? But here's the thing, that doesn't have to be that way. I mean, crying out loud, in the comic with Thor the God Butcher, Gore the God Butcher, when Thor's battling him, Loki's not part of that at all. So Loki is not a necessary piece of, hey, if Thor's going to be there, Loki must also be there. It's kind of similar to Batman, where the Joker is the ultimate Batman villain, right? There are plenty of other compelling and worthwhile foes for Batman to tangle with. Thor's got a similar dichotomy with Loki. Loki's always his peak villain, but there are so many other villains, so many other adversaries that are worthwhile, and geez, they just never got it right.
No.
And they killed them off pretty much too quickly every time.
Maybe they need to see if Peter Jackson's available.
Yeah, because I agree. I think there was a missed opportunity there. So it's a bummer, because Chris Hemsworth has done an outstanding job with the character, and in the Avengers movies,
Only thing holding him up.
yeah, in the
Chris
Avengers
Hemsworth.
movies, he's been phenomenal. So too bad that on the individual front, his movies have been somewhat lacking. So let's do Ant-Man next. You have Ant-Man
At 5.
in the 5 slot. For me, it's 4, which kind of surprises me.
You have him over Iron Man?
I do. I do.
We just have him flip-flopped.
We just have him flip-flopped. And for me, Ant-Man, the entertainment value is just a little bit more consistent. Not once does any of the 3 Ant-Man movies reach that tier of this is as good as it gets, right? The first Ant-Man movie, okay, it was good. Ant-Man and the Wasp, also good. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, King was awesome. And there are other parts of the movie that I enjoyed. A lot of questions, but overall I enjoyed it, right? So there was never a movie in that Ant-Man trilogy that I went to.
Yeah.
You?
Well, I would agree. I mean, it was. I think Wasp should have been in a suit in the first one. Looking back, I think it's great that they established Ant-Man in his own movie, but I think she just give her the suit in the first one. I think, but like that's another thing. You look back, the first movie, you have Yellow Jacket, which was kind of a play on an actual Marvel character, but like in a unique, different way, with their own created person to wear the Yellow Jacket suit. And he was an okay villain.
But just okay.
Number 2, couldn't even tell you who the villain is in that one. A ghost.
Right.
Ghost.
But very much like very
sympathetic.
Soft villain, very soft villain. Right. The villain that's not really a villain.
The fact that she's coming back to me is like, right? But then the third one, you got Kang, which is strong. And say what you want about MODOK. Not a bad villain either. But it was also just the Yellow Jacket guy coming back.
we have to rabbit trail for just a brief moment. How bizarre is it, Riles, that the same studio that crafts these empathetic, believable, extraordinarily detailed and real raccoon, rabbit, walrus, and otter Photoshop a human face stretched out onto MODOK.
Because they probably do
I mean,
not.
again, I thought it was hilarious, but it was also bad.
They probably don't pay their CGI people the money that they should. They probably don't give them enough time like they should.
Yeah.
And then they get rushed. The
Uh-huh.
whole Phase 4, rushed.
Yeah.
We can go back into how bad She-Hulk looked
Microwave.
off the get-go.
Yeah.
That's their own fault.
I
But-
just had to bring that up.
but-
Get on that. Yeah.
Ant-Man
Okay.
fit its vibe better than Thor, which is just idiotic.
Wow. Right. It shouldn't happen. Shouldn't happen. Yep. Yeah. Okay. All we need to say about Ant-Man. Iron Man. You got Iron Man in the 4 slot. I've got him in the 5 slot. And I do that. And I don't feel great about that. I could flop that around. So
But
I mean,
in,
Iron Man 1 is incredible. Right.
Right.
That's again, there's that tier. As good as it gets.
but in your defense, Iron Man outweighs the rest of the movie
Yep.
in both 2 and 3.
Mhm.
Iron Man 1, him versus Obadiah, is amazing.
Yes.
Him trying to craft his own suit.
Oh.
He was a very good villain. The turn at the end on Tony,
Yeah.
realizing he orchestrated the whole thing.
Great.
Brilliant.
Great storytelling.
Absolutely brilliant.
Yep.
You go to 2, where you have Whiplash, which, again, I think was a great choice for an actor to play him.
True.
But they
Yeah.
did not do him justice in that movie for some reason.
Yep.
And again, Hammer?
Justin Hammer.
Justin Hammer
Yeah.
was not a bad villain. And I
No.
don't know if it was the fact that they tried to shove them both in the same movie and it just didn't play well.
Yeah. I think Iron Man 2 also got caught, and this wasn't its fault. It got caught in the Avengers movie is coming out soon, so we need to do some world building, right? So we got to
Right.
introduce Black Widow. We got to give Nick Fury some more time and remind everybody that he's there, because nobody actually knows that he's there unless you stayed for the end credits scene in Iron Man 1, which those didn't exist.
Right.
Thing, and so most people left.
Right.
So I think that was probably what held that movie back as much as anything.
And it has arguably the most iconic suit up scene for Iron Man with the suitcase armor.
It's a
The
great-
suitcase armor still gets talked about, and it's arguably the worst Iron Man movie. So make that make sense.
right.
But the
Right.
fact that he wasn't the first person to come up with the arc reactor, and it was
Mhm.
someone that Tony's dad knew,
Right.
like,
Old Soviet scientist had a
brilliant.
yeah.
Play
There-
off
yeah,
that more.
There were good pieces in that movie. It just never quite hit a whole stride, and especially coming off of the expectations from Iron Man 1.
Right.
That's tough to top. And Iron Man 3, like, I think I like it more every time I rewatch it.
I love when he calls in the Hall of Armor.
Yep.
Coolest fight scene. One of
Yep.
the coolest fight scenes
Yep.
there are. Him hopping from one suit to another as that guy just tears him apart.
Yep. Yeah, the awkwardness with Iron Man 3 is, whereas Iron Man 2 felt so necessarily connected to the wider and growing Avengers world, Iron Man 3 felt weirdly disconnected, because it ends and it's like, oh, he's retiring? He doesn't need the arc reactor anymore? So he's saying he's out. So he's out, and then he's very much not out in Age of Ultron. It was such a clunky, and the MCU didn't do this again. But that was such again, I feel bad for that movie, because it felt like it had to, as the oldest kid, it had to teach his parents how to parent, right?
Right.
Parents go, ooh, that didn't work.
Well-
Okay, next kids, we'll do that differently.
And Killian, I didn't care about.
Yep. Correct.
Like, he was just kind of there. I wish they would have played more into it. Like, Cap had Hydra. It would have been cool to see Iron Man have AIM.
Right.
AIM would have been perfect for this movie, and it was
Right.
teased about. hinted at that he worked for AIM, but that wasn't the focus.
Right.
So that was odd to me, just a little bit.
Yep. Here's really who it should have been. The villain should have been Ezekiel Stane, Obadiah's son. Because in the comics, Ezekiel Stane, that is an awesome comics run. Iron Man, The Five Nightmares. That is where Ezekiel Stane is out to just tear Tony Stark down to the studs. And he has what Killian, the extremis, that is a big part of what Ezekiel Stane perfects. And he develops these human bombs, which is what they do in Iron Man 3. So they did it all without Ezekiel Stane. It would have been so much more impactful if instead of this, they tried to make Killian an empathetic villain with his initial interaction with Tony, but it just didn't quite work.
Or, you could have done the Mandarin and wrapped the 10 rings up in that trilogy.
Yeah.
That would have been phenomenal, but why would we do that? Because it would have also been cool to see tech versus magic. That would have been brilliantly done.
There you go.
But for some reason, we don't want to do a comic accurate Mandarin, and we want to put on an actor in that movie who plays the Mandarin. And by the way, if you remember those movie trailers, I was hyped for Iron Man 3. I'm like, oh, they're doing it. Ben Kingsley, fantastic actor. I mean, obviously, he's not Mandarin at all. Still dope.
It was a bold swing, and it was also a really clear miss. It was just it didn't land. It was one of those, yeah, okay, we get it. You explained it. It's a joke. We're not laughing.
But Tony outside of the suit in that movie, fantastic. Showed he was just as good outside of the suit as in it. So
Agreed. Agreed. I think those three, right? The Ant-Man movies, the Iron Man movies, and the Thor movies, those are a clear, okay, here's your bottom half tier. Now, the upper crust, this is where it gets. This is good, right? And I can certainly see rearranging, my order sometime down the road. But let's, we've spent a lot of time on Guardians. Let's spend a little more time on Guardians. Okay. Just to put a bow on it for the Guardians. What an incredible set of movies, Riles. I probably watched the first Guardians movie 3 or 4 times in theaters because I was just so enthralled. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Like it was a space odyssey epic with characters I'd never heard of before, and I was just delighted to be amongst them.
In a weird way, it was probably my generation Star Wars.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
But I mean, and for the most part, they put out bangers for villains. Ronan
was underutilized, but he was a good villain. He was effective.
Not terrible, but not the best.
Yep.
But you also had multiple antagonists in that one movie. You had Ronan
Nebula was very antagonistic.
Thanos' presence was there, and you also had Yondu going after Star-Lord in that one.
Right.
Pretty good if you think about it from that standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, Ego, and the effect he had on Peter, brilliant. And then we just talked about the High Evolutionary being a top 5 MCU villain all time, currently at this point in juncture, and the effect he had on Rocket, not only it's impressive to have good villains, but ones that affect the heroes to that extent is something to say.
That's a mark of a good villain.
Right.
Or an effective villain, I should say.
And the character growth with them as a unit, as individuals, well done. Well done.
No, totally agree. I want to end on Spider-Man, so let's hit Captain America next.
Agreed.
Winter Soldier is maybe my favorite individual MCU movie.
Oh yeah, arguably.
It's so much fun and so easy to go back and rewatch as many times as a person could possibly want to. First Avenger, I was lukewarm on when it first came out. I gained a greater appreciation for it once Cap's arc wrapped up. with Endgame. Now I go back and rewatch First Avenger and the seeds that are being planted and cultivated and growing from that first movie, whether it be with Bucky or with Cap's just I'm out of man out of time scenario or his romance with Sharon. It's great. It's more enjoyable to watch that movie in light of what came after it. Standalone, I don't think it's terrific. It's good. It's also effective. And then Civil War is terrific. I love most the dynamic with Cap and Bucky in Civil War. Civil War gets pretty big, right, with all the characters in it. But I really, really enjoy what stays at the heart of that movie, which is the Cap and Bucky relationship.
See, and I mean, first of all, Red Skull, first one, fantastic. Villain that you want to die, right up there with High Evolutionary,
Yes.
right? Number 2, Winter Soldier. Again, we talk about relationships with the hero.
Yep.
That's up there. Watching your
No
best
question.
friend become a villain that he doesn't even know who he is anymore. That's
Right.
terrifying.
Right.
Civil War is where it gets interesting for me because I almost can't count that as a Captain America.
It's hard. No, it's hard to. It's more an Avengers movie than a Captain America movie.
Right.
But then if you call it an Avengers movie, you probably have people say, this is more of a Captain America movie than an Avengers movie. So it's kind of a branding problem. It's like no matter what you designate it as, it's probably close to something else.
But it's like, it almost feels like Cap got robbed of that
I agree.
third. Like, I wouldn't have minded it being more focused on him in that movie.
Same.
Like, if they would have just labeled it Civil War and then focused it on everybody involved. I mean, that's kind of what they did already, but I think that's
I know
why
where you're coming from.
I think that's why I put it at 3. But Zemo, fantastic.
It was.
Like Cap's trilogy hit every villain.
Yeah.
And I think First Avenger is underrated as well because I mean that whole point of that movie is it doesn't take a good soldier, it's a good man.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah, it sets up the soul of the MCU
for sure.
Yeah, good things. All right, Spider-Man. What a great trilogy, and I didn't see that coming.
It really is. It really is.
It's great, and it's so unique because we don't. It's almost an inverted origin, right? Where we start with
it is an inverted origin.
The character, who is. He's in existence, he's been around, and it's almost this inversion where you get his origin.
He wasn't fully Spider-Man yet.
Weirdly, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet he had more resources.
Right.
With Homecoming coming on the heels of Civil War, and then Far From Home, after Tony's passing and Tony trying to give Peter the mantle of the smart tech, and then to have No Way Home bring it back to how about an Aunt May, sacrifice? And we don't see anything of Uncle Ben, that the Aunt May sacrifice, the absolute delight that I still have to close my eyes and go, yes, it was real, of Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's version of Spider-Man coming into the fold. Incredible.
And to be like his Uncle Ben.
Right.
Essentially. Yeah. They kind of, well, I mean,
no,
Aunt May,
you're not wrong.
Aunt May is the Uncle Ben in this version of Spider-Man.
Yeah, but they take part of that role as well, the mentor
role,
piece.
Yes.
No question. And where we end that trilogy, to have Spider-Man back at his roots, where he doesn't have the technology, he doesn't have the resources, he doesn't have friends, he's isolated. And that is such a core part of Spider-Man's character from the comics, is the isolation that comes with accepting the mantle of the hero. That's reality for most heroes that aren't named Tony Stark.
Right.
It was incredible character development, and I won't argue with a single person, including you, that goes, no, that's the best, or that's my favorite. It's a great choice.
Well,
it's a great choice. It's a worthy choice. You put that in that spot, and I go, yeah, that's a great choice.
But and even with it, like, because you can make the argument that it didn't really feel like Spider-Man until No Way Home.
Mm.
But if you think about it, they really leaned into his villains
Yep.
and nailed it every
I
time.
agree.
Michael Keaton's Vulture, phenomenal, and
I
they
agree.
didn't kill him.
Like,
Jake
right.
Gyllenhaal's Mysterio, what a douche. And it landed well.
It was great.
He played that so well.
Totally agree.
The CGI stuff, the robots,
Yeah.
masterful.
It was great.
And it made sense because you see that, and from the comic standpoint, you're like, well, how does he do all the illusions and stuff in this situation?
Right.
For him to bring it to this scale, impressive. And then No Way Home, giving us Doc Ock again with Alfred Molina.
Still can't believe that.
Willem Dafoe coming back and being like, you thought Alfred Molina was the best villain in the Raimi trilogy? Let me remind you who I am. And comes in and tears it up. It was phenomenal.
Agreed.
Electro, Sandman, Lizard. I'm like, it's good to see him, but
Sure.
I'm not like.
They weren't, fortunately, it wasn't forced, right? Where we had to get a lot of them. They were there for enough.
You weren't at watching the Statue of Liberty fight, waiting for Sandman and Kobe go at it. You were waiting to figure out when Willem Dafoe was going to decide to make his appearance in that scene.
Correct.
It was phenomenal.
Yep.
So, yeah.
No, totally agree. An outstanding trilogy.